Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life? Like you're playing a role that doesn't quite fit? Wearing a mask that's become so familiar you've forgotten your real face underneath? Jung called this the persona, and you're not alone in this feeling. You're definitely not imagining it. There's a specific reason why so many of us feel disconnected from our authentic selves. The answer lies in understanding Jung's 5 forms of rebirth, ancient psychological patterns that can transform how you experience yourself and your life. One of these paths might be exactly what you need to finally feel like yourself again. But first, you need to understand how deeply this mask has shaped everything about how you move through the world. This performance begins the moment you wake up. You adjust your tone for your boss, soften your edges for your family, and present the version of yourself that gets the best response from whoever stands in front of you. This isn't manipulation or deception, it's survival. Jung called this your persona, the social mask that helps you navigate the complex world of human relationships and expectations. Think about it. Right now, you're probably wearing some version of this facade. Maybe it's the competent professional who never shows weakness, or the agreeable friend who avoids conflict at all costs. Perhaps it's the responsible adult who has everything figured out, even when you feel lost inside. These social identities develop naturally as we learn what works in different situations. A child quickly discovers which behavior gets praise and which brings punishment. Over time, these successful patterns become automatic responses. The persona serves a crucial function. It protects your vulnerable inner self from judgment and rejection. It helps you fit into groups, maintain relationships, and achieve goals in a world that often rewards conformity over authenticity. Without some form of social facade, you'd struggle to function in society. The problem isn't having a persona. The problem is when it becomes so convincing that you forget it's just a role you're playing. Consider the high-achieving executive who works 16-hour days, climbs every ladder, and earns recognition from peers and superiors. On the surface, everything looks perfect. But inside, this person feels empty, disconnected from any sense of real purpose or joy. The identity of success has become so complete that they've lost touch with what actually matters to them. They've confused their role with their true self. Or think about the people pleaser who automatically says yes to every request, who molds their opinions to match whoever they're talking to, who has become so skilled at being what others want that they can no longer access their own genuine preferences. Their social facade has eaten away at their authentic self, leaving them feeling hollow and unsure of who they really are beneath all the accommodation. The psychological cost of this identity confusion runs deep. When you live primarily through your persona, you experience a constant sense of performance anxiety. You're always on stage, always monitoring how you're being received, always adjusting your behavior to maintain the image. This exhausting vigilance drains your energy and creates a persistent feeling of being disconnected from your own life. French psychologist Pierre Janet called this state abaissement du niveau mental, a lowering of mental tone that leaves you feeling depleted and weighed down. Even great thinkers recognize this deep exhaustion as a kind of loss of soul, connecting what we experience today with observations made over a century ago. The social identity that once protected you starts to suffocate you. You find yourself asking unsettling questions. Who am I when nobody's watching? What do I actually want, separate from what I think I should want? If I stripped away all these roles and expectations, what would be left? These questions feel dangerous because they threaten the carefully constructed identity that has gotten you this far in life. Some people reach a point where they can no longer tell where the facade ends and they begin. They've been performing for so long that the performance has become their reality. They've successfully convinced everyone around them, including themselves, that the role is who they really are. But the authentic self doesn't disappear just because it's been ignored. It continues to exist beneath the surface, creating an internal tension that manifests as depression, anxiety, or a vague sense that something essential is missing. The most unsettling realization is that many people live their entire lives without ever meeting their real selves. They're born, they develop personas that work in their environment, they refine and perfect these social identities throughout their lives, and they die, having never encountered the person they actually were beneath all the conditioning and expectations. This recognition creates a profound crisis. Once you see the facade clearly, you can't unsee it. Once you realize how much of your life has been performance, you face a choice. You can continue living through the persona, accepting the safety and social approval it provides while sacrificing authentic self-expression. Or you can begin the difficult process of discovering who you are when all the roles fall away. Jung understood that recognizing the persona is the first step toward psychological rebirth. But this transformation follows patterns that humans have discovered across cultures and throughout history. Jung identified 5 distinct pathways to psychological rebirth, each offering a different route to transformation. These aren't modern self-help concepts or New Age inventions. They're ancient patterns that have operated in human consciousness for thousands of years and continue to shape how we change today. The first pathway involves transmigration, metempsychosis, where your essential self journeys through different experiences and forms of existence. Have you ever felt like you've lived multiple lives within your single lifetime? The shy child who became the confident teenager, the rebellious youth who transformed into the responsible adult, the career-focused person who discovered their creative side later in life. Each phase feels like a different person inhabiting the same body. This transmigration doesn't require belief in literal past lives. It's happening right now in your psychological development. Your soul, your core essence, moves through different states of being, different identities, different ways of experiencing reality. Even in Buddhism, metempsychosis raises questions about continuity. Buddha didn't clarify if personality or only karma persists through these cycles, perhaps because the question itself misses the point. The second form, reincarnation, focuses specifically on the continuity of your individual personality across different states of existence. This form suggests that your human personality remains accessible to memory, that you can potentially recognize and recall these different phases of your development as belonging to the same core self. Think about moments when you've suddenly remembered a forgotten aspect of who you used to be. When an old song or photograph brought back not just memories, but an entire way of being that you thought you'd lost forever. Most people know about these first 2 mystical forms of rebirth, but they miss the most practical ones that are available to everyone right now. And it's the next 3 forms that could reshape your life right now. The third pathway is resurrection, the reestablishment of your authentic self after experiencing a kind of psychological death. This isn't about literal dying and coming back to life. It's about those moments when everything you thought you knew about yourself falls apart, when your old identity dies and something new emerges from the wreckage. Maybe you've experienced this after a major life crisis, a career change, or the end of a significant relationship. The person who emerges from these experiences often feels fundamentally different, as if they've been reborn into a new way of being. Jung understood that this resurrection can involve essential transformation, where you become a completely different type of person, or non-essential change, where only your life circumstances shift. The deeper form involves what he called the raising of the corpus glorificationis, the subtle body, into a state that transcends your previous limitations. This might sound mystical, but it describes real psychological experiences where people discover capabilities and aspects of themselves they never knew existed. The fourth form, renovatio, or renewal, represents the most accessible pathway to rebirth because it happens within your current lifetime without requiring dramatic upheaval. This renewal can manifest as improvement in specific functions or aspects of your personality. You've probably experienced this when you suddenly became better at something that used to challenge you, when you developed skills or qualities that surprised you, or when you found yourself responding to situations in completely new ways. Renovatio can also involve essential transformation, the metamorphosis from one type of being to another. Think about people who undergo profound personality changes through therapy, meditation, or other transformative practices. They remain the same person on the surface, but something fundamental has shifted in how they experience themselves and the world around them. The fifth pathway involves participation in transformation processes that occur outside yourself. This happens when you engage with something greater than your individual consciousness and allow that engagement to change you from the inside out. Jung pointed to religious rituals like the Mass, where participants become partakers of divine grace through their involvement in the transformative process. But this participation doesn't require religious belief. It happens whenever you genuinely connect with art, music, nature, or other people in ways that expand your sense of who you are. When you watch a powerful film and feel changed by the experience, when you participate in meaningful conversations that shift your perspective, when you engage with causes larger than yourself, you're experiencing this form of rebirth through participation. These 5 pathways aren't abstract concepts from ancient wisdom traditions. They're active psychological processes happening in modern lives every day. But for some people, transformation never comes at all. Instead, some people experience the opposite phenomenon. They disappear piece by piece until almost nothing authentic remains. You might recognize this process in yourself or others. It starts quietly, almost imperceptibly. The things that once excited you begin to feel dull. The energy you used to bring to conversations, relationships, and activities slowly drains away. You wake up feeling tired before the day even begins. This isn't just having a bad week or going through a rough patch. This is personality diminution, the psychological shrinking that happens when we lose vital parts of ourselves. Think about the warning signs that your personality is contracting rather than expanding. You might notice a general sense of malaise, a feeling of being weighed down by life itself. Jung quotes Janet's term, abaissement du niveau mental, to describe this dip in psychic energy that makes it difficult to face even basic daily tasks. Your mind feels foggy. Your enthusiasm for things you used to enjoy completely disappears. Simple decisions become overwhelming because you've lost connection to your own preferences and desires. Depression, listlessness, and emotional numbness serve as early indicators that something essential within you is fading. This isn't just temporary sadness or normal life stress. It's a fundamental loss of psychological vitality that affects how you experience everything around you. You might find yourself going through the motions of your daily routine while feeling completely disconnected from the experience. Even positive experiences fail to penetrate the growing sense of emptiness inside. The most disturbing aspect of this process is the fragmentation that occurs when you deny essential aspects of who you are. Jung understood that personality diminution involves the loss of what he called the unity of consciousness. Parts of your authentic self become split off and inaccessible. You might recognize this when you can't access creativity that used to flow naturally, when your sense of humor disappears, or when you can no longer feel the passions that once drove you forward. Living according to others' expectations slowly erodes your inner substance in ways you might not immediately recognize. Every time you suppress your genuine response to choose what others want to hear, every time you adjust your behavior to avoid disapproval, every time you sacrifice your authentic preferences for social acceptance, you lose a small piece of your psychological vitality. Over time, these compromises accumulate until you can no longer locate your own voice beneath all the accommodation. Jung identified this as the development of an essentially negative personality that represents a falsification of the original self. You become a shadow of who you could have been. Your self-confidence erodes because you're no longer connected to your genuine strengths and capabilities. Your mental horizon narrows because you've trained yourself to think only within the boundaries of what others find acceptable. The original spark of your unique personality gets buried under layers of learned behavior designed to keep you safe and approved of. This psychological phenomenon resembles what primitive cultures called loss of soul, the experience of feeling empty, disconnected, and lifeless. You might feel like you're watching your life happen to someone else, like you're trapped behind glass observing, but not really participating in your own experience. Jung noted that this involves a feeling of being disconnected from oneself, of parts of the personality becoming independent and escaping conscious control. You become a stranger to yourself. The most dangerous aspect of personality diminution is how many people mistake this shrinking for normal adult responsibility. Society often reinforces this confusion by praising people who suppress their authentic selves in service of duty, obligation, and social conformity. You're told that growing up means putting aside childish things like spontaneity, creativity, and genuine emotional expression. You're encouraged to be practical, reasonable, and realistic, which often translates to abandoning the very qualities that made you feel most alive. Jung understood that what triggers this process is often the failure to recognize a moment of crucial importance. There are turning points in everyone's life where they must choose between their authentic path and the safer route of social acceptance. When you consistently choose safety over authenticity, when you repeatedly ignore the whisper of your genuine desires, you begin the process of psychological diminution. The fatigue that comes with personality diminution isn't just physical tiredness. It's the exhaustion that comes from living at odds with your true nature. Your psychological system is working overtime to suppress authentic impulses and maintain a persona that doesn't fit. This creates what Jung called a loss of energy or libido that affects every aspect of your experience. You feel drained because you're fighting a civil war inside yourself. Recognizing personality diminution is crucial because it shows you what you've lost and what you need to reclaim. This awareness becomes the first step towards psychological recovery. Once you can see how your authentic self has been compromised, you can begin to understand which parts of your personality need to be restored to wholeness. What if instead of shrinking, you could reclaim each piece you've lost? Where would you begin? But sometimes the opposite happens. and your inner world expands in ways that can feel overwhelming. There are moments when a larger version of yourself suddenly appears, and it can be terrifying. You're going through your normal routine when something shifts inside you. A capacity you never knew you had emerges. A strength you didn't realize existed takes over. A vision of who you could become floods your consciousness with overwhelming clarity. This isn't gradual personal growth or steady self-improvement. This is personality enlargement, the sudden expansion that happens when powerful new aspects of yourself integrate into your existing identity. Jung understood that this enlargement often comes from encounters with ideas, experiences, or inner revelations that fundamentally change how you see yourself and your possibilities. Think about Friedrich Nietzsche's transformation when he encountered what he called his Zarathustra persona. Nietzsche had been known as a critic and scholar, someone who analyzed and commented on culture and philosophy. But when Zarathustra emerged from within him, he became something entirely different. He transformed into a tragic poet and prophet, channeling insights that seemed to come from beyond his ordinary consciousness. Consider also the Apostle Paul's sudden confrontation with Christ on the road to Damascus. One moment, he was Saul, a determined persecutor of Christians, completely certain of his mission and identity. The next moment, he encountered a force so powerful that it completely restructured his personality. He became Paul, a man with an entirely different worldview, different values, and a completely different sense of purpose. These weren't gradual changes developed over years of reflection. They were sudden expansions that revealed hidden dimensions of personality. Jung saw these as classic cases of enlargement, the psychological bud unfolding into a greater figure. These transformations represent encounters with what Jung called the self, the archetype that contains your full potential. When you reach what he described as a summit of life, this greater figure emerges from within, which can feel like a revelation. This process can feel like possession by a foreign force, because the enlarged self seems to operate beyond your normal range of capabilities and understanding. You might find yourself thinking thoughts that surprise you, expressing ideas you didn't know you believed, or acting with confidence and authority that feels completely unfamiliar. The experience can be disorienting because it challenges your established sense of who you are and what you're capable of. Jung recognized that encountering your immortal self, this deeper and more complete version of who you are, can be overwhelming precisely because it reveals the limitations of your ordinary consciousness. The symbol of Christ represents this hidden immortal within mortal humans. Jung also pointed to the dual motif of the Dioscuri, where one twin is mortal and the other immortal, to illustrate this tension between your everyday self and the expanded self that carries greater potential. The key distinction lies between healthy expansion and dangerous inflation of the ego. Healthy expansion involves integrating new aspects of yourself while maintaining connection to reality. You recognize that these new capabilities or insights are part of your natural development, expressions of potentials that were always present but previously unconscious. Dangerous inflation happens when you lose this grounding, when the expansion feels foreign because you haven't properly integrated it into your existing personality structure. The moment of recognition when you meet your inner friend, your deeper and more complete self, represents a crucial turning point in psychological development. Jung described this as an experience that can burst an iron ring round the heart, indicating a release from constraints that had previously limited your sense of what was possible. This recognition breaks down barriers and allows for a deeper connection with your authentic nature. However, Not everyone can handle meeting their larger self. Those who are inwardly great will recognize this expansion as their true nature emerging, understanding that they're encountering aspects of themselves that were always present but hidden. They have the inner capacity to embrace and integrate this expanded awareness without losing their grounding in reality. But those who are, in Jung's words, truly and hopelessly little, may fail to understand the significance of the transformation. They might drag the revelation down to their ordinary level of understanding, missing the opportunity for genuine growth. Or they might become inflated by the experience, mistaking the expanded state for proof of their superiority rather than recognizing it as a natural part of human psychological development. The process requires what Jung called an inner capacity to embrace and integrate the incoming content. This means having enough psychological stability and self-awareness to allow the expansion without being overwhelmed by it. You need to be able to make these new experiences your own while maintaining connection to your established sense of self and your relationships with others. But not all personality changes come from this kind of conscious expansion. Sometimes the shift happens through forces that feel completely outside your control. Psychological possession represents transformation through invasion, where foreign forces take complete control of your personality. You're walking through your normal day when something inside you shifts completely. Your behavior changes in ways that feel completely foreign. Your thoughts follow patterns that don't match your usual way of thinking. Your reactions surprise everyone around you, including yourself. This isn't gradual change or conscious development. This is structural alteration, where specific contents or forces gain dominance over your entire personality. Jung understood that these structural changes represent a distinct form of transformation, where your ego personality identifies with a complex or archetypal force. Think about how this manifests in your daily life. You might notice rigid plans that resist any form of correction. You develop peculiar convictions that seem to come from nowhere but feel absolutely certain. You find yourself acting according to ideas that don't match your established values or personality traits. These dominating contents take control of your psychological system and redirect your behavior in unexpected directions. In Jung's model, the inferior function is our psyche's weak spot, the back door through which shadow contents sneak in. This function acts as a gateway that allows your shadow and other hidden aspects to influence your conscious behavior. When your inferior function takes control, you might find yourself making unfavorable impressions on others without understanding why. You create obstacles for yourself that seem to appear automatically. You act in ways that undermine your own efforts and goals, often feeling like you're watching someone else make these destructive choices through your body. Possession by the anima or animus can completely alter how you think and act by emphasizing traits of the opposite psychological gender. Have you ever felt driven by feelings that weren't your own? When a man becomes possessed by his anima, his feminine aspects dominate his personality. He might become moody, unpredictable, and driven by emotions that seem to come from outside his normal experience. When a woman becomes possessed by her animus, her masculine traits take control. She might become obstinate, dogmatic, and domineering in ways that feel completely unlike her usual self. Jung noted that both the anima and animus lose their positive qualities when turned toward the world in this possessed state. Consider people you know who become completely unrecognizable when certain psychological forces take control. The normally gentle person who becomes harsh and critical under stress. The rational individual who suddenly makes decisions based entirely on emotion. The independent person who becomes completely dependent on others' approval. These aren't just temporary mood changes. They represent moments when different aspects of personality gain complete dominance over the usual conscious control. Ancestral patterns and cultural complexes can override your individual personality in ways that feel like external invasion. You might suddenly find yourself acting out patterns that belong to previous generations, adopting roles and behaviors that match your family history rather than your personal choices. Jung observed this in primitive cultures where ancestral spirits were believed to be reincarnated in children, leading to sudden assumptions of ancestral roles and dramatic shifts in behavior and identity. Group dynamics create another form of possession, where collective psychology overrides individual consciousness. When you become identified with a group, your personal boundaries dissolve, and you begin acting according to mass psychology rather than individual decision-making. This group possession operates on a lower level of consciousness than individual experience. Your behavior becomes driven by collective emotions and ideas that may completely contradict your personal values when you're alone. The experience of watching yourself act in ways that feel completely foreign creates a disturbing sense of disconnection from your own life. You observe your behavior as if watching a stranger use your body and voice. You hear yourself saying things you don't believe or making commitments you don't want to keep. You feel like a passenger in your own experience, aware of what's happening, but unable to regain control of the steering wheel. This raises the fundamental question that haunts many people's quiet moments. Are you living your life, or is something else living through you? When you examine your daily choices and reactions, how many of them actually come from your authentic desires versus unconscious forces, social expectations, or inherited patterns? Could the crowd's force be masking your authentic choices right now? Recognizing these possessions represents the first step toward reclaiming conscious control of your transformation process. But throughout history, humans have discovered more structured approaches to interchange that don't rely on random psychological invasion. Ancient cultures developed precise technologies for transformation, rituals that could reliably trigger psychological rebirth. These weren't random ceremonies or superstitious practices. They were carefully designed systems created by people who understood something fundamental about human psychology. Mystery schools across different civilizations discovered that certain structured experiences could consistently produce profound inner changes in participants. They developed what Jung recognized as technical transformation methods, systematic approaches that could accelerate and direct the natural processes of psychological development. Think about how these mystery schools operated. They used dramatic reenactments to trigger transcendent experiences that would fundamentally alter a person's consciousness. Initiates would participate in symbolic death and rebirth ceremonies, experiencing the dissolution of their ordinary identity, followed by the emergence of a new, more integrated sense of self. These rituals mirrored the cyclical patterns of life, death, and renewal observed in the natural world, creating a structured pathway for psychological transformation. The genius of these ancient practices lay in their understanding that transformation requires more than intellectual knowledge. You can read about change, think about growth, and analyze your personality patterns, but real transformation happens through direct experience. The mystery schools created immersive environments where participants could actually live through the process of dying to their old self and being reborn into something new. These experiences weren't just symbolic. They produced genuine psychological effects that lasted long after the ritual ended. Psychotherapy represents a modern equivalent of these ancient technologies, creating a structured space where you can explore unconscious material and integrate hidden aspects of your personality. Jung understood that therapeutic approaches represent elaborations of the originally natural processes of transformation. Like the ancient mystery schools, effective therapy provides a contained environment where psychological dissolution and reformation can occur safely. The key distinction lies between authentic ritual transformation and empty ceremony. Authentic rituals are designed to dissolve the boundaries of ordinary consciousness, creating genuine opportunities for inner change. They engage your full attention and participation in ways that can produce lasting psychological shifts. Empty ceremonies, by contrast, involve the outward performance of ritual actions without the inner engagement necessary for true transformation. They may look impressive or feel meaningful in the moment, but they fail to trigger the deeper processes that create real change. Participation in meaningful rituals can dissolve the boundaries of ordinary consciousness in ways that allow profound inner shifts to occur. Consider how the Mass functions as what Jung called a living example of a mystery drama. The congregation participates in a sacred rite that transcends ordinary time and space, creating what he described as a moment of eternity. Even those who attend without full conscious engagement still participate in the transformative action through their presence and involvement in the collective experience. The psychological mechanics of how ritual creates lasting inner change involve engaging multiple levels of consciousness simultaneously. Effective rituals work through symbols, actions, and group participation to access unconscious material that remains hidden during ordinary awareness. They create temporary dissolution of ego boundaries that allows new psychological contents to emerge and integrate. The structured nature of ritual provides safety and containment for these potentially overwhelming experiences, making transformation possible without psychological fragmentation. The effectiveness of these transformation technologies lies in how they imitate and accelerate natural transformation processes. Jung observed that all ideas of rebirth are founded on the fact that nature herself demands a death and a rebirth. These technical methods work by consciously engaging with psychological processes that would otherwise happen unconsciously and unpredictably. They provide tools for navigating transformation in ways that increase understanding and integration, rather than leaving you at the mercy of unconscious forces. What makes these approaches powerful is their recognition that transformation involves both dissolution and reformation. The alchemical principle of solve et coagula, to dissolve and then reform, operates in all effective transformation methods. Whether through therapy, meditation, or ritual practice, you must first dissolve existing psychological structures before new ones can form. These techniques provide frameworks for managing this dissolution safely while supporting the emergence of more integrated ways of being. The most important insight about technical transformation is that these methods serve to make conscious what would otherwise remain unconscious. Jung noted that natural transformation processes develop considerable psychic effects, which would be sufficient in themselves to make any thoughtful person ask himself what really happened to him. Technical approaches help you understand and participate consciously in your own transformation, rather than simply being overwhelmed by unconscious changes. But sometimes the mind transforms without any prescribed ritual at all, guided by symbols and stories that emerge from the depths of human experience. Ancient symbols carry the deepest truths about transformation, and one forgotten fish holds the key to meeting your immortal self. This comes from the 18th surah of the Quran, the cave, which Jung used as a rebirth mystery. The tale follows Moses and his servant Joshua on a journey that seems simple on the surface, but contains layers of meaning about how we encounter our deeper selves. Moses represents your ego, the conscious part of your personality that thinks it knows where it's going and what it needs. He sets out on a quest for deeper understanding, guided by his servant Joshua ben Nun, son of the fish, symbolizing our primal roots in the unconscious. These two travelers carry with them a fish for nourishment, a humble provision that will become the catalyst for everything that follows. The pivotal moment occurs where the two seas meet, a symbolic location that represents what Jung called the place of the middle. This convergence point symbolizes where your conscious and unconscious minds intersect, a critical threshold of transformation that you might pass through without recognizing its significance. Moses and Joshua reach this place but don't immediately understand what's happening there. The veil between different levels of reality becomes thin, but they're not yet ready to see through it. The forgotten fish represents those small, seemingly insignificant moments that trigger transformation in your life. Moses and Joshua become so focused on their journey that they forget about their simple provision. But this forgetting isn't a mistake. It's exactly what needs to happen. The fish comes alive and returns to the sea through contact with what the commentaries call the water of life. Think about this pattern in your own experience. How often do the most significant changes in your life begin with something you overlooked or forgot? A conversation you weren't planning to have, a book you picked up by accident, a decision you made without thinking it through completely. These seemingly random moments often become the turning points that redirect your entire path. The fish represents these humble sources of renewal that we dismiss as unimportant until they disappear and we realize what we've lost. Moses represents the ego that must learn to follow guidance from the deeper self rather than trying to control every aspect of the journey. When Moses realizes the fish has disappeared, he understands that something significant has happened. This moment of recognition marks the beginning of his transformation. He must now learn to trust a wisdom that comes from beyond his ordinary consciousness, a wisdom personified by the mysterious figure of Khidr. Khidr emerges as the immortal guide who appears from the unconscious when you're ready to receive deeper guidance. Jung understood Khidr as a symbol of the self, the ultimate center of your being that encompasses your ego but extends far beyond it. Khidr possesses qualities that your ordinary consciousness lacks. He's called the long-lived one, who continually renews himself. He serves as guide, counselor, and friend, leading Moses toward a higher consciousness that transcends the limitations of rational thinking. The cave mentioned in the story symbolizes the unconscious realm where your true treasure waits to be discovered. This isn't just any cave, but the specific space where transformation occurs through what Jung called an unconscious process. The cave represents the darkness behind consciousness, the hidden realm where your integrated self develops away from the interference of your ego's constant planning and control. Entering this cave means connecting with unconscious contents that can produce a momentous shift in personality. The legend reveals that transformation often comes from the most unexpected sources. The immortal being emerges from something initially overlooked and underestimated. This aligns with what Jung observed as the archetypal hero's birth motif, where the transformative substance or deity appears in humble circumstances. Your deeper self doesn't announce itself with fanfare or obvious signs. It emerges quietly from the forgotten corners of your experience, from the things you didn't think mattered. The water of life that brings the fish back to consciousness represents the continuous influx of energy from the unconscious that sustains your psychological vitality. Jung understood that consciousness cannot generate its energy independently, but requires this nourishing influence from unconscious contents. When you lose touch with this source, you experience the psychological diminution discussed earlier. When you reconnect with it, you access renewal and expansion beyond your ordinary capabilities. Your immortal self is already present. waiting for you to forget the right thing at the right moment. The story suggests that rebirth often requires a kind of sacred forgetting, a willingness to let go of your tight control over the journey so that deeper wisdom can emerge. The fish's disappearance creates the conditions for Keter's appearance. Your ego's careful plans must sometimes dissolve for your authentic self to surface. But how does this forgotten fish unlock the door to our immortal self? The answer reveals which path to transformation might be calling to you right now. Each path offers a different doorway to the same destination, meeting the person you were always meant to become. The secret life you never lived isn't buried in your past. This is the secret life you never lived, waiting to be born within you. Which form of rebirth calls to you most strongly? Do you need to remove the mask that's suffocating your true self? Must you expand into the larger version of yourself that's been hiding? Or do you need to forget something precious, like Moses forgot his fish, so your inner Keter can finally emerge? Everyone carries an immortal self within them, but only those willing to shed their masks, face their shadows, and trust the mysterious process of becoming will ever meet this deeper part of themselves. Are you ready to meet the immortal you've been ignoring? If this resonates, let me know in the comments which form of rebirth speaks to you.